Welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about how you can build unshakable trust in yourself, even if perhaps you've let yourself down before. Now, I know this is something that affects a lot of us. It affects a lot of people, especially if you're a busy parent or an overworked employee or maybe an entrepreneur trying to keep it all together. So let me just set the stage by asking you a couple of questions, kind of getting the ball rolling as a part of this. So have you ever told yourself, or have you ever thought to yourself, like, I'll wake up early tomorrow and I'll finally get back to journaling when fill in the blank. I'll start that thing I keep talking about, and then only to break your promise to yourself again. And then maybe a voice kicks in and says, see, you can't even trust yourself to follow through. And just like that, like, you start shrinking. You start second guessing your choices. You start losing the steam that you had. Maybe you're feeling stuck again. Like, I know that loop, not because I've read about it, but because I lived that loop for a very long time. I remember sitting, at my desk, drowned in a list of to-dos with that hum of the fluorescent lights and everything, looking around and thinking, like, how did I get here? Like, and I was playing the part, I was smiling, I was performing, but inside it felt like I was slowly disappearing from who it is that I was. But what I didn't know back then was that, like, it wasn't more like discipline that I needed to get the ball rolling or anything. It wasn't some big breakthrough. Like, it was just trust. And it was trust in myself to just show up, to follow through, and to mean what I said I was going to do. Like, especially when no one else was watching. So today I want to talk about how you can build unshakable, like, self-trust. Not through hype or, not through hustle, but through, like, some very real, like, doable principles, strategies, practices that, even work when life feels loud or overwhelming or completely unpredictable. Now, these are the exact tools that I've used and that I've taught to, hundreds of people, parents, entrepreneurs, professionals, to help them, get back to themselves and starting with one small promise at a time. Because when you start, keeping your word to yourself, that's when everything starts to change. All right, so now my name is Jake Talbert. I'm the founder and I'm the author of this book. It's called The Giver Method. It is an Amazon bestseller with tons of 5-star reviews. Came out in November, and thousands of people have already seen massive changes in their lives from it. And so I highly recommend, if anything that we're talking about today resonates with you, that you go get a copy for yourself. You can find it on Amazon, The Giver Method, but I'll also include a link down in the description where you can go get access to it. Limited time, it's going to be a little bit less money. It's going to be like $10, so go get access while you can before the prices go up on it. All right? If this is what you're looking for, if you're ready to build something solid that, doesn't fall apart when you start to second guess yourself, like that, it really starts to resonate with you, then at the same time, I'd recommend it. Just hit subscribe, ring the bell for notification on the channel here. I don't want you to miss out on any of the content that we cover about uncovering gifts and superpowers, living a more fulfilled life, giving more generously, having, deeper, more meaningful relationships, all of those types of things. Okay. You've got more strength in you than maybe you've been giving yourself credit for. And I want to help you to uncover it one small win at a time. All right, so we're going to dive through these things also down in the description. I'll include places where you can find us, like on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, or our website, thegivermethod.com, for additional resources or, ways that we can help people. Cool? All right, let's dive in. Let's start getting this thing rolling. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about, the first principle or strategy, is to start with, if you want to start building trust, is to start with these incredibly, impossibly small, like, promises. So as we start to dive in, like, let's keep it super simple, but it's like, it is truthfully one of the most powerful things you could do. If you've ever told yourself, like, I'm gonna start working out every day, or this week I'm finally gonna fix my business systems, or from now on I'm going to, be more patient, no matter what. And then you watch those promises that you gave yourself quietly crumble. Well, like I said, that's the whole point of this video. You're not alone. The problem isn't the intention. Like, it's actually the size of the promises you're making to yourself. Maybe they're too big. Maybe they're coming too soon. And when you break them, it chips away at your own self-trust. So here's the move. Here's the thing, is to just start with these impossibly small moves, okay? Make micro promises, like little commitments that are so small that they almost kind of feel silly that you would even make a commitment about it. But trust me that they work, because they're doable, and they create a track record for your brain, that you can start to say, like, okay, well, I was able to do it, and it starts to build trust back in yourself. Drink a glass of water first thing, Write just one sentence in the journal. Like, put the workout clothes on, and then if you stop there, you stop there. Open the project file, give it a quick glance. That's it. Start something. Like, it's so simple. Now, it's not about being lazy. It's not about any sort of a shortcut. These are just, I'm doing strategic reps to train my brain to see myself as someone who follows through. And the more often that we keep those tiny promises, the less power any sort of an inner critic has on us, to say, like, you're just gonna let yourself down again, or you're not gonna be able to follow through. Now, here's how you put this really into use. So pick one area that you've been maybe, I keep using the term breaking promises to yourself. Maybe, it's your health, maybe it's your focus, maybe creativity, your parenting, whatever. Like, figure out whatever it is and then scale it down, and then scale it down even more, likely uncomfortably down as small as possible. Now, if your goal was like, I want to work out daily, well, change it. Like, I'm just going to put on my shoes after I brush my teeth. If you're like, I wanted to, write some big paper or book or, a blog or whatever, it's like, great. Well, all I'm going to do is open a doc after my morning coffee. I'm just going to let it sit there. Attach that promise to something that you're already doing throughout the day, and then track it. And put it on a calendar, put a sticky note, whatever works best for you. Watch how a chain of consistency will begin to grow for you. Little checkbox on the page, like, that's proof. It's momentum. It tells you, like, gosh, I did it this day, I did it that day, and I keep moving forward based off of that. And when, not if, but when the micro promise starts to feel too easy, then you level it up. One push-up, you do one other one, you write a sentence, one tiny moment of progress. You're not rushing, you're just starting to stack those wins on top of each other. Now, this principle matters because it builds that consistency in your confidence, and the confidence builds you courage to keep moving forward. Which leads us into our second strategy or principle that you could look at, which is about creating evidence of your reliability. Something that doesn't get enough credit is like the promises that you do actually keep, the things you actually are doing day to day. And so here's what happens to a lot of us when we mess up, whether we miss a deadline, break commitment, we tend to remember those things forever. We let them eat at us. It becomes more proof for that little voice that whispers, like, where it's like, see, you let yourself down again. But when we do follow through, when we do keep a promise to ourselves, like, we shrug it off like it doesn't count. And over time, that becomes a bigger problem, not because you're unreliable, but because you've been collecting the wrong evidence for yourself. So we want to flip the script on that. We need to get the proof that you can be trusted. And the truth is, you already have plenty of it. You're just not tracking it. So start maybe like an evidence journal that you could have. Like, take out a notebook or a note on your phone, and back of a receipt, I don't care, write on anything you want, and start to keep track of the promise to yourself that you do keep. Write them down. Doesn't matter how small they are. I put my phone down during dinner. I went on a 5-minute walk. I said no to something I don't have space for in my life right now. Like, just name it and log it, whatever it is. And then, like, don't just write what you did. Like, write how you felt. Like, hey, it felt good to follow through even though I was really tired. Like, I was nervous to send a message, but like, I am proud that I didn't back out of it. Or I almost skipped journaling, but I didn't, and that mattered to me. Like, so when you connect these things to the emotion, that's how you start shifting your identity. You're not just keeping promises, you're becoming someone who keeps promises, and that's way more powerful. And here's where really secret sauce, like, review it. Pick some time each week, small moments of time. Maybe it's a Sunday night, maybe it's Friday morning. Go back and read through things you've written and reread your wins. Remind yourself, like, who it is that you're becoming, how you're changing. And maybe you're more visual, like, grab a jar and start dropping marbles, or fold up a sticky note, or every time that you do something for follow through, like, and just watch how that evidence starts to build up over time. Someone needs you to be reliable and steady, and it's already there in your life. You have the ability to do it. In those moments where self-doubt will creep in, you're going to have proof. You have this growing list of the receipts that say, like, no, I actually do show up for myself. I've done it before, and I can do it again. Which starts to make us build towards this third principle, which is embracing learning in the learning that you have when you have these slip-ups or broken promises. Most of us, we're never taught, like, in that you're not supposed to get it right every time. Like, most of us are taught we're supposed to do it a very certain way. In fact, one of the fastest ways to build self-trust isn't by being perfect in any way. It's by learning how to repair when you're not perfect. Now here's what most people do when they break some sort of a promise themselves, or they don't follow through with something. Like, they either go straight for self-criticism, like, I knew I'd mess up, or they minimize it, like, well, whatever, it didn't matter anyway. But like, both of those responses do the same thing. They slowly chip away at your own personal self-respect that you have. But there's a totally different way to do it, a better way, one that actually helps you grow instead of spiral where you're at. It's called having looking at it from a learning response. You acknowledge that you missed. It's okay. You do it without shame. You get curious as why that happened, and then you adjust your plan and move forward. So, here's what that could sound like in real life. Like, let's say that you promised that you were going to write for 15 minutes a day and you didn't. Instead of spiraling and being like, well, you didn't follow through, it's like, well, why not? Was it too big of a promise? Was my timing off? Did I forget? What was there resistance in any way, fear or doubt or discomfort, like, that I wasn't expecting? And once you spot what has actually gotten in your way, well, then how do you shrink the promise down and reset it so that it aligns more with who you are right now? Instead of writing for 15 minutes in the morning, maybe it's, I'm going to open the document, I'm going to write a sentence or so and see how far that gets me. And then the key is you just take action right away. Don't wait till tomorrow. Like, just take the one small step now. You're not trying to catch up by any means. You're just trying to prove that, you can still show up in that moment. And then this is the key. Take action. Like, just go and do more. You're going to prove to yourself that you're able to do that. That's how you break the, like, all or nothing trap that people fall into. That's how you stop letting one miss turn into, like, maybe a meltdown. Most people think self-trust is built through, like, perfection and then seeing the results of that. And it is not. It's built through pattern and rhythm, through a steady process of, like, I'm going to mess up, I'm going to realign, and then I'm going to move again. You're going to miss sometimes. That's being human. But when you learn from it and you treat it, as a chance to look at, what was the thing I promised? What was that thing I didn't follow through with? And look at that as a detour. Like, you stop quitting on yourself and you just start looking at it, any sort of mistake is proof that you're, hey, I've got more learning to do and I'm not quite there yet, but I'm on the right path. Now, the fourth thing is, like, you then want to connect all this with a deeper purpose, because let's be real, it's hard to keep showing up for something that doesn't mean anything to you. And that's exactly why a lot of, like, promises and a lot of the things we try to tell ourselves, like, never stick, because deep down, like, they're not our commitments and promises. Like, they're someone else's. They're someone else's checklist of what successful life is supposed to look like. You probably know, like, well, you should be waking up earlier, or you should be posting more content. Like, you should be caring about climbing this corporate ladder. Like, here's the thing. Like, you don't build self-trust by forcing yourself into a life that isn't yours. You build it by consistently honoring the things that matter to you and doing them again and again. When your commitments are rooted in purpose, not just pressure, something shifts. You're no longer pushing, forward with guilt or shame, but you're being pulled forward by the meaning that you have. It's the difference between, like, hey, I need to work out more, and, like, I want to feel strong so I can chase my kids around the yard and show up for my family. Like, it's a big difference. A big difference between, like, I'm going to grow, like, I have to grow my business, and, like, I want to build, something that reflects who I am and that I can make a greater impact and difference in the world. And so how you do it is, like, start by asking yourself better questions, like, not the usual, like, what should I do? Like, instead ask, like, what actually matters to me? What kind of parent, partner, leader do I want to be? What kind of impact do I want my work to have? What would feel meaningful even if no one else saw that I was doing it, that I would walk away with more energy and joy. Once you get that clarity, now tie it to daily promises, commitments, to things that you can do that align with your values. If you're trying to build a morning routine, don't make it about productivity. Make it about showing up and being present and grounded for the people that you love. If you're committing to writing, that blog or recording that video, like, connect to the deeper purpose. Like, I'm trying to help and encourage people. I'm trying to create a ripple effect. Like, whatever it is, write it down. Put it where you're going to see it. Journal about it. Put it on a sticky note. Put it, part of your phone that you have to view every so often. Like, make your why impossible to forget when resistance is going to show up. Because here's the truth. Like, willpower will fail. Eventually, it always does. But meaning and purpose, that stuff sticks. It fuels you through the days that, like, motivation, where your motivation starts to disappear. So the fifth thing that we want to talk about is, like, honor your own natural rhythm as a part of this, because most of us are trying to build better habits using somebody else's operating system. We're forcing ourselves into like a morning routine when we're a night owl. I'm a morning person, and if I told most of you my morning routine, people like roll their eyes every time. They're like, "You wake up at what time? You do what?" Well, you're trying to sit still and plan when your brain actually thinks best when you're up and moving. You're following some sort of rigid schedule, that completely ignores how you work best. And when that happens, we break these commitments and promises to ourselves, not because we're lazy or undisciplined, but because we're building a system that was never designed for us in the first place. That self-trust gets stronger when you stop working against yourself and start working with what you're just naturally wired to do. This doesn't mean that you avoid growth. It means you just start from a place that actually makes the most sense for you right now. It's not about staying comfortable forever. It's about designing, these commitments and things that match your rhythm first, okay? So they actually stick, with you for the long haul. So what you want to do is start by paying attention to your own patterns. Like, when do you have the most energy and focus? When are you the sharpest in the morning? Or do you come alive at night? Do you think better when you are sitting quietly or when you're moving around? Talking it out, or if I sit and I put on headphones and I listen to music. Like, track it for a few days. Doesn't have to be anything fancy or anything like that. Just jot down some quick notes like on your phone or something, and then notice the things that feel smooth when you're constantly like pushing uphill. And then take a look at the commitments, the promises that you've made, and start to be like, well, how do I start to be honest with myself? Like, which ones flow with my own rhythm and which ones feel maybe like I'm forcing it? If you keep setting 6 a.m. workout and never doing it, maybe the problem isn't your discipline. Maybe your body is just wired to function a different way, and a midday walk or a 7 p.m. workout session would actually work way better for you. So you can then redesign those commitments so they fit, with how you operate. If you think best while you're moving, swap out your desk so you can have brainstorming on a walk with a voice memo or anything. Like, if you're a night owl, stop beating yourself up for not having that morning routine. Like, if you're motivated by collaboration, bring others, into your goals instead of trying to just tough through it by yourself. Like, the goal isn't to stay stuck in what's easy. It's to stop wasting energy pretending like you're wired based off the way someone else has told you to do it, on Instagram or whatever it may be. So start building trust based on what actually works for you. Because most of your commitments, and promises match that can match your natural rhythm. Like, they're just so much easier to keep as you do that. You start to shift where you start to have real and more sustainable growth, which leads us to the sixth and final principle we're going to talk about, which is, building momentum through this courageous action and then celebrating your progress. Like, most of us are waiting to feel ready before we start to make any sort of bold moves. We're waiting for the fear to go away, for the timing to be right, for, until I have more energy or clarity or confidence. But here's the truth. Confidence doesn't come through, confidence doesn't come before courage. It comes after that. Self-trust, that's built not just by keeping the small promises in your comfort zone, but by stretching yourself. And it takes out just one small, brave moment at a time. What I found is, both in my own life and in working with people, that it's not the huge leaps that you start to build the most confidence and trust in yourself. It's the small but brave steps that you take, the ones that make your heart just beat a little faster. The ones you almost talked yourself out of, but then you did it anyways. So you send in the email you've been avoiding. You say the thing out loud that you've been whispering in your head. You're setting that boundary that feels like terrifying, but is absolutely necessary. Admitting to yourself that you're ready for something different, even if you don't know all the answers. Like, these courageous micro actions, like small, you want to make them just small enough to do, but enough that they stretch you a little bit more. And where it gets really powerful is when you pair those steps, with real and meaningful celebrations of progress along the way. Not just outcomes, but like the momentum that's going to last for you. So identify first, like, one place in your life where you've been holding back. Maybe it's parenting, you've wanted to be more present, but days start to just slip away and you go into that survival mode. Or maybe in your business, you've got a lot of ideas, but you haven't shared them with anyone yet because, like, you're nervous to. Or maybe, like, in your job, like, you're doing the work, but you've stopped advocating for yourself or for your future. And then ask yourself, like, well, what's the one step that I could take this week? Not huge goal, not full transformation, just one small step that's real and courageous, where based off where you are right now. Something like, I'm telling a friend about a dream that I've, been sitting on, or I'm reaching out to a potential client or a collaborator, or, having one honest conversation, with your child, even if it gets messy, or saying no to something that's been draining you, whatever it is, and then schedule it, write it down, put it on your calendar, name the day and time. I'm going to do it Tuesday, 10 a.m. I'm sending that email no matter what. Thursday after my kids go down, I'm going to speak with, my idea out loud to someone who's going to listen to me. After you take that step, celebrate the courage, that you did it, not the result that the thing's been done, but that I started the process. Too often we ignore our wins because we didn't do it right, or we didn't go far enough. It wasn't big enough, but every time that you do something that you're scared of, every time that you act in a direction of your values, you're stacking evidence you can trust yourself. So start measuring it. It's not about perfection. It was, maybe I wasn't patient all day, but I did it. I was more patient at times that mattered. I didn't grow my business, crazy this week, but I saw these growth opportunities, whatever it is, make it a regular thing each day, each week, start to write down the things that, what were the, micro actions you took that started to see progress? What's something that you're proud of that shows that you're making a change in your life? It might feel really small at first, and that's okay. Those small steps, they're still building the foundation for you that doesn't disappear when life gets hard or motivation starts to fade. Whatever it is, pick whatever that thing is, because action creates evidence, and then the celebration teaches your brain what you're doing is good, and that you need to keep doing it, and that way your brain doesn't check out when those types of things come in. It helps you push forward and keep the motivation that you need to move forward. So let's kind of start to wrap this up as we talk about this, as we look at the different ways that you can do that of building this unshakable trust in yourself, building these, on these commitments that you make to yourself, or the promises, however you want to look at it. It's not about becoming a hyper-disciplined or ultra-productive version of yourself. It's just about returning to the truth of who you already were. Who you've been underneath all the noise. Someone who cares deeply. Someone whose gifts and superpowers matter. Someone who could be counted on, even if you haven't felt that way in a long while. We talked about these different principles today. Each one is small and a practical way to start rebuilding some trust, in yourself from the inside out. Not through perfection or through hustle, but just that consistent real life follow through. The kind that starts with just small efforts that compound really, really fast. And listen, you don't have to master all of these by tomorrow. Just pick one, start there, even if it's one tiny promise to yourself. Just keep it. And then start to shift the way that you see yourself, because that's how that self-trust is built, not through the big declaration, but in the small actions, the quiet evidence that you're showing up for what matters, even when it's hard, it feels hard, even when no one's watching. If you've been stuck in hesitation, if you've been living a history of this, struggling with your commitments or broken promises to yourself, I'm wondering if it's too late for you to believe in yourself. Let me just say, it is never too late. You're not broken in any way. You're not too far gone. You're just one honest commitment away from starting to build that momentum again. And so that's what, you start next. Maybe take that small, maybe it's a 5-minute habit you need to do. Maybe it's sending that one email. Maybe it's speaking out loud the thing you've been keeping buried. Just whatever it is, start there. That's how you build trust, you build courage, and you remember who it is that you really are. Now, if this conversation resonated with you, if it sparked anything in you, then once again, that's why you want to go grab the Giver Method book. Go get it on Amazon. I'll put the link in the description. I'll add a free resource, the Giver Roadmap, down in the description as well as the links to all the other resources that we have. If this message helped you, please hit the like button. Once again, subscribe to the channel. Share with someone else who may be struggling to find themselves and trust themselves again. Drop a comment. Let me know, what are the principles, which of these stood out to you the most? And what's that small promise you want to commit to doing today? My name's Jake Talbert. I mentioned that earlier. And until next time, please just keep showing up. Keep giving from that real place of who you are. Remember this, that the most courageous life that you could ever live, it starts with that one small promise that you can make, and just building on that one small promise at a time. Trust me, you've got this. I believe in you. The universe is waiting for you to show up in the way that you can show up, just by making some small, simple changes in your life. Let's keep building on it from there so that we can make that greater impact in the world. Have a great rest of your day. We'll catch you in our next video.